Hey everyone, so this is our little intro into our next activity, which will be looking at energy conservation and in particular energy transfer and transformation. Okay, so before we move on, let's have a quick review of what we've learned from our friend Sir Isaac Newton. If you need to revise the 3 laws of motion, pause the video now, have a read through, maybe look through some of your notes from past classes, and then carry on. Okay, so from here on in we're going to be looking at energy conservation, which the law of energy conservation states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So if we think about that, the energy has to go somewhere. Okay, so energy conservation can occur by 2 processes. That's energy transformation or energy transfer. So energy transformation refers to the conservation of energy from one form to another. So we have some examples on the side here, so we can look at chemical energy in the food that we eat and how we in our bodies convert that to mechanical energy utilized in our muscles so that we can do activities, running, jumping, riding a bike. Okay, we can also look at the sun. So the sun produces light energy, radiant energy, which is converted into chemical energy via photosynthesis, which you might have looked at last year. And then we can look at these other examples too. So chemical into motion by a car, petrol is being used in cars, and electrical energy being converted to thermal energy. So another example of energy transformation is the transformation of, or the conversion of potential energy into kinetic energy. So if we can think about a car at the top of a hill, that car has potential energy, alright, because of its position at the top of the hill, because of its configuration, it has the potential to do work, okay? And if someone was to push that car, or it was to accelerate down that hill and begin to roll, its energy would be converted into kinetic energy as it is now in motion. And we need to remember that kinetic energy is the energy of an object in motion. Now, cars have specialized features in their design to accommodate for these transfers and transformations in energy. So these car safety features are put in place to keep us safe when we're driving. Now, I think this is a really important unit to do now because you're all getting your licenses, or you've got your learners, and you might be looking at getting a car soon. And it's really important to understand these safety features when doing that so that we can keep ourselves safe while we're driving. Now, for this next scenario, I want you to think back to Newton's 3rd law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So if a car is traveling at 100 kilometers an hour and it was to collide with a solid wall, it would experience an equal and opposite reaction or force against it. So it would feel the 100 kilometers an hour, the 100 kilometer an hour force that it would be. Now, I want you to think back to Newton's 3rd law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So, with that in mind, if a car is traveling at 100 kilometers an hour and was to collide with a solid wall, it would experience an equal and opposite force against it. Okay, so that means that although the car is exerting that 100 kilometer an hour force, I'd like you to think back to Newton's 3rd law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Now, keeping that in mind, if we think about a car traveling at 100 kilometers, so I'd like you to think back to Newton's 3rd law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So with that in mind, if a car is traveling at 100 kilometers an hour and it was to collide with a solid wall, the force that would be applied to the wall as a result of that acceleration would result in an equal force against the car that has hit the wall. Okay, so just because the car is the thing that is creating that force, that impact force against the wall, doesn't mean it is not going to experience an opposite force. So as this energy, this kinetic and transformed energy cannot be created or destroyed, that has to go somewhere. That energy has to be absorbed or transferred somewhere. So safety features have been developed in cars to reduce this force and absorb the collective energy that's involved in car movement. So this prevents the energy being transferred to vehicle occupants and causing serious injury. Now, while we've been looking at energy transformation and energy transfer, it's important to keep in mind that energy is lost in car crashes as well. Car crashes are what we call inelastic collisions, which is when energy is lost or transformed to another energy type. That energy we're talking about is kinetic energy. Obviously, when we hit a wall, the kinetic energy, our movement is going to stop. Okay, so it's therefore lost or transformed to another type of energy. And during car accidents specifically, this energy can be lost as heat from the brakes, sound, or friction from the tires. So this might be surprising for some people, but our cars are actually built to crumple. Okay, so the front of our car, the bonnet of our car, is specifically built so that if we hit something, it's gonna squash up like a can. Okay, so this is an example of energy transfer. So the energy of our car, the energy that is absorbed when our car hits something. Alright, because remember, we don't want, as the occupants of the car, we don't want that energy to be transferred to us, because that's going to cause some serious injuries. So instead, what the crumple zone does is absorb the energy and slow down the collision time of the car, so that reduces that momentum. Alright. It's also an example of energy transformation, as the process of the car crumpling up, the front of the car crumpling up, is an example of energy transformation into heat and sound energy. So this is another way that our cars keep us safe. It's interesting. It's not something that we think about all the time, but it's definitely worth thinking about. Okay, so we've had a chat about crumple zones, which are a key safety feature in a lot of cars that take into consideration the laws of energy conservation. Now, I'd like you to move on from here and think about some other safety features like seatbelts, airbags, headrests, brakes, and consider why they might be in place in reference to some laws of physics. Okay, so they're obviously there for a reason, and I want you to think about why that might be. Okay, because what your task will be next lesson is to work on designing a crash test car with enough safety features to prevent an egg from cracking in a collision. So your passenger will be a chicken egg, and you want to aim to keep him safe because he's going to make a mess if he cracks. Okay, so you'll be given some materials eventually, but what we'll be doing next lesson is really brainstorming and nutting out these safety features and why they're there in order for you to make the best possible crash test car that survives the worst collisions. Okay, so I'll see you then. Look forward to it. Bye.